family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of On Point on our parent company, Focus on Liberia. I am Jerome Kemayah, your host. I am actually from South Florida. Here, Miami is our biggest city. With me are two intelligent young men who are here to debate the issue as they see it. Mr. Dualu, brilliant young man from the Northeast. Mr. Dualu, how are you doing? How's the family? How's the weather up there?
Everything is going great. We are praying for you guys down there in Florida as always, but we are good. Everything is great. We are healthy, but we just continue to think about Liberia. That's why we talk. And Mr. Eastman, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you. Hey, gentlemen, I'm looking forward to a riveting conversation. There are so many things going on. We have a lot on the plate, but more importantly, there's a lot in our country that's going on. We have a lot at stake. It's about time we turn it around and move the needle in a more positive direction. So hopefully what we say, what we contribute, our suggestions and ideas will promote the positive gains of our country.
Thank you very much. As you said, Mr. Eastman, the topics in Liberia, like we say, it's easy picking. You could have 1,000. We have issues in our own discussion room here to pick very few topics, and we couldn't come up, but at least we agreed to do 4. So we will do these 4. We'll look at the President Weah celebration, his birthday, in the midst of our crisis when we're talking about our staple food, rice. Second on the list, the U.S. State Department has invited our Foreign Minister, Mr. Kemayah, to Washington, D.C. for the conference on Feed the Future. This is strange, but has a lot to do with national security here. The drug bust that leads to a seizure of unprecedented $100 million worth of cocaine. Suspects are in custody, some are at large. The UP, the Unity Party political leader Joseph Newman Boakai, says that George Weah government is the most irresponsible ever in the history of Liberia. So, Mr. Dualu, you are the guest here. So we'll put you on the hot seat. We started with the president's celebration. The president just turned 56. Birthday was held in Liberia. The youth wing of the party came and had a major press conference, and they canceled all festivities in Liberia, with the exception of a few friends getting together at the president's residence. What says you about where we are in our democracy, the presidency, the crisis about rights?
The first thing I want to say is, Mr. Gilman, is happy birthday belated birthday to the president. That God continue to bless him. Hopefully that blessing extends to our republic. But I want to say this. There was a lot of preparation that went into President Weah's birthday celebration, something I frowned upon. It was not necessary, given the crisis in the country. And overall, before I go into detail there, I don't think the president is giving this crisis sufficient attention. I think the focus was on the president's birthday celebration, but the mere fact that the birthday was canceled to some degree, and I will give the administration some credit for that towards Jamaica result. And I want to say this to the president. When you were given an opportunity to lead a country for the duration of your tenure, you have to set aside every single thing. Guys, could you mute yourself? I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I apologize. Okay. The president is on an obligation to literally bury every dreams, hopes, and aspiration of himself for the duration of that tenure. Okay, thank you. For the duration of that tenure. And I don't think President Weah has done that. I don't think President Weah understands the awesomeness of the responsibilities of the office of the presidency. As he's taking it lightly, he continued to tour around with the Liberian people's business. He thinks the presidency is about him, not about the people. And I think President Weah have to understand one thing, and I will continue to say this. President Weah will do himself a favor, and this republic a great favor. If he doesn't run in 2023, I would prefer he steps down today. If he doesn't run, because he has absolutely nothing to offer, no leadership area to offer, absolutely nothing to offer to the republic. In fact, he's a danger to the country. The mere fact he stays in that position. And I will give it to my brother Eastman. You're muted.
Fine. Just like Dwalu mentioned that the birthday celebration was toned down a little bit, which is making apparent that the president's office was sensitive to the issues in Liberia right now. We're facing a shortage, whether artificial, whatever, but reports coming from Liberia are telling us that not only rice is hard to find, which is our staple, but also the prices are rising quickly, very quickly. At one time, we were talking about the price of rice being relatively low in Liberia compared to Ivory Coast, compared to Guinea or Sierra Leone. But with this shortage, it has given rise to prices. When there is rice available, we see buyers standing on lines and many times going home empty-handed. So it's good that the president is aware of this. And I think it's important that he addresses this issue. When he came back from the UNGA, one of the first things he mentioned was that he was going to address this issue. I think it is a pressing issue. And I hope we see something being said about it by next week. There are things we can do. I think they need to open it up so that anybody can bring rice in, whatever they need to do. But more especially, the critical issue is the subsidy for imported rice. Is that a good decision for us? I think that there's the economic implications of what we're doing that we need to reconsider. But the president's birthday, happy birthday, Prezzo. But I don't see that why he shouldn't celebrate it. Tone it down, yes. But there are some pressing issues we need to address, and very, very serious issues. And if you do not get the right think tank together to address these issues, they will get worse. They will get worse.
Yeah, thank you very much, gentlemen. I think we have to agree on one thing here. It is time that we sat around the table, leave the politics aside, and finally address the issue of rice. I was vice president of the Chamber of Commerce, and I know very well that every entrepreneur goes into business to make a profit. If you are not making profit in any business, you have no right to be in business. The primary objective of business is to make a profit. Liberia has the lowest price of rice in the sub-region. And for you to see entrepreneurs looking to Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, and they are selling rice $18, $22, $24 per bag, 25 kg. And in Liberia, the president or the administration is telling the business owner to sell the rice at $13.50, and he subsidizes something like $2 extra. That makes it, even with the $2 subsidies, okay, that brings it up to $15, which is nothing compared to what other folks are paying. So that is the impetus for folks who are bringing rice to Liberia to say, and Dwalu, we got to be honest here with each other. If Dwalu is importing 300 megatons of rice, okay, at $13 in Liberia, and next door, they're calling you, waving you over, and say, we give you $22. It makes sense For me to go and steer my ship over to the Ivory Coast, where I'm getting almost 10, 15, 20% increase on the price of rice. So we have to have an honest discussion here and say, listen, we have to let our people buy the right rice at a market value. And we have to find a way for the subsidy to go directly to me. It should go directly to the people in other forms than going to the Lebanese or the Indians who are from what I'm hearing, are smuggling the rice into Guinea, Ivory Coast, and Sierra Leone for a markup, which is reasonable, which is understandable by any means for anybody who is a business person. You have to make profit. So these people are holding onto the rights. They are holding onto the rights. They know it's political in nature, but until we can address that, we are going to be repeating ourselves over and over, Mr. Dualu.
Yeah, I'm going to say this. I want to get rid of one misconception. And to my brother, Stevie Johnson, welcome to the show, brother. How you doing? Liberia's rice is not cheaper than what they're selling in Ivory Coast or Guinea or anywhere else. You have to look at the quality of rice being brought to Liberia by comparison into Ivory Coast and Guinea. Let this spell that. There's a reason why there is a lower portion in Liberia. But I want to say this. Look, until we allow the free capital market system to work as it is designed, we will always be burdened with what we shouldn't be. Liberia should not be subsidizing rice permanently. The rice have to be sold at the appropriate price for it to be available on the market in Liberia. The reason why the government is taking, look, every decision that President Weah has made, it's been a decision to promote himself, not a decision for the protection of the country. He's trying to subsidize his rice because he's been told this is a political commodity. In order to keep this commodity non-political, you have to allow the market to work. Look, I would prefer if they sold rice in Liberia for $40 and it's available, than not to have rice at all. Let the free market system work. Every decision the president has made as it relates to the rice issue has been a very bad decision. The Commerce Ministry, look, let's ask ourselves a few questions, Mr. Gamer, and I'm glad you brought this up. Number one, how much rice is consumed in the country every single day? Nobody knows this. I'm sorry again, guys. There's a feedback. I don't know when I'm talking until you guys are muted. I usually get the feedback. Thank you. That's much better. So, how much rice is consumed in the market? If the Commerce Ministry cannot say to the Liberian people how much quantity of rice should be in reserve. Another thing I've been saying for almost 5 years, this started on the Ellen Johnson study. Why doesn't the government have its own warehouse farm to keep our foods in reserve? We got a couple of warehouses, 3-4 warehouses out of Freeport. This is all we depend on. Any responsible country around the world, they have these massive warehouse farms that they can import rice themselves. But since President Weah came to power, there's not been a single policy around the issue of rice besides subsidizing rice. Everything around rice has been a deception. Remember the pro rice? There was a donation to the Republic of Liberia. President Weah put this rice in bag in order to promote himself. Rice is a commodity that is consumed by our people. It has to work in a free capitalistic system. Anybody should be allowed to import rice into the country, but they make it so tight that nobody can bring rice until you are in with the government officials. Now, there are reports in the country that those in power want percentages of this rice. So we are further stringing our people. The decision has to be made. Look, this is about governance. It has nothing to do with President Weah. Every decision President Weah makes affects every single one of us, whether we are in the country or we are not. He has to lead on the nationalistic level. And that's my argument. I'll give it to my brother Eastman.
Yeah, I want to respectfully agree and respectfully disagree with some of what my illustrious brother Dualu said. First of all, I don't believe we should subsidize imported rice. And I will tell you why. All over the world, farmers are subsidized because what you want to encourage local growth, because local growth enables you to be self-sufficient. But there are times when farmers can't sell their produce. There are times when the market tanks. So these farmers, not to discourage them from going out of business or for ceasing production, the government steps in and makes up the difference, subsidizes any loss, any product they didn't sell, they buy it from them. So the farmers then lose. That is the type of subsidy we need to encourage production. But imported products, imported food, what we're doing is actually providing an unrealistic price to the market, for our people. Yes, it is our staple, but we are not allowing for economics goes by substitution. When the price goes up, what's going to happen? Your alternative goods can come and fill that gap. We are not allowing these forces of economics to take its rightful course. We're trying, for political reasons, we're trying to subsidize this rice we eat, but we are supposed to be working on producing more or using alternative or substitute goods. So we're not allowing ourselves to go through the developmental process. It is a development we just keep on kicking the can down the road. There was an attempt, as we all know, to drop this subsidy, and that led to the 1979 riots. But I think it was politicized, or even maybe it should have been gradually introduced. Maybe it needed to go through stages, but it is something we have to do, But definitely, there are things that are going on, and if we do not address this issue, I think another thing Dalu said, which I agree, a lot of these policies we don't see anything much different than what the UP party left in place. And this, I need to address this. A lot of things that the UP party left in place were not correct. They may do. So when you take over the administration, you have to put your think tank on and start adjusting policies, making the proper decisions going forward to improve the situation. You don't simply continue as it was, because it wasn't perfect in the first place. So that is why you have to hire people who have expertise in this area. Okay? And even if it's just for consulting, you have to get the people, because we need to perfect the system. We need to improve the system, not keep it as going. What I'm noticing, people are very content with the status quo. Oh, let's just keep it rolling. And that is what you will eventually see a breakdown, because it was not all that good in the first place. So we have to focus on coming up with new strategies, new policies that will promote Liberian welfare, Liberian local production, and not simply fill the shoes of somebody else were walking in the other day.
This is apolitical, and we all agree. And I'm going to be asking you for us to throw around some ideas, some solutions, so we can move on so we can do as much as we can to make sure that this move on. Before we move to the next, when I was with the Chamber of Commerce here, they work with the children and family, they work with agriculture, and what they have been successful in doing in this country is something that we also need to look at, is the diversified diet. Okay, so to the point, and I think other African countries are doing it too. We need to learn from Ghana, Nigeria, other places where they eat their meals are diversified. They eat a lot of yam, potato, eddo, and rice, and all of that. So, but in Liberia, it's only rice. Our diet is not diversified. It's only rice. And we all know this. You go to the interior, you go to Monrovia, you take this person out, and you have a nice cassava gravy and fish and all that. The person leaves and says, I ain't eat nothing yet. Because they have not eaten rice. So it's more than just that. It's psychological. It is traditionally driven into our DNA that we have to re-educate. Mr. Duello, I think you need to talk about this, because you are the more entrepreneurial person here. But we got to diversify our diet in addition to doing our own growth.
Mr. Gibbon, I'm a stickler not for forcing people into what they want to do. I'm more towards making the economy work and let the economy force people to make certain decisions. This is what I mean by that. You ask a very poignant question, and I want to speak to that directly. What can we do to address the rest problem in Liberia? Every single time people say, well, and Mr. Eastman did say something I 100% agree with. We have to subsidize local people in order to get the kind of output we are looking for growth. Now, Lee Kuan Yew will always say this. I love Lee Kuan Yew. I follow almost everything he's ever written, everything he said in Harvard days. And he would say this. How do you expect a society to develop? The Africans do this all the time. And I'm paraphrasing his quote here. The African will push their best and brightest out of the country to the political disagreements, and they expect to grow internally. It is not possible. To the contrary, what he did was he recruited massively the best and brightest to come into Singapore and maintain it. This is how you gain growth. But look, the solution to our problem with the rice production is very easy. If the government just follow this basic method, it works, it has worked, it will continue to work over and over. You are not reinventing the wheel. This is very simple. The government can take every single year into the national budget. The agriculture ministry should be done as an institution just for oversight. This is a simple thing. In fact, if you have time, anybody can Google the paper that I put out there called Leveraging Liberia Resources to Lift the Pro-Poor Agenda. And the argument that I made was very simple. Here's the argument. Mr. Eastman goes to Liberia. Mr. Eastman knows something about farming. The government said, listen, Mr. Eastman, we've built a warehouse farm. And I'm all for the warehouse farm building. The government has to take $20 million, $30 million. Build, if there's 100 warehouses, you have to build this stuff. Mr. Eastman, you don't have any money, but you have tremendous expertise in the agriculture field. But this is what we want. Anybody who produces rice, we are going to buy it, but you don't have any money. We'll give you $2 million. This is a subsidy. This is not free money. It's a grant. If you meet these criteria, the money goes to you permanently. And the rice you grow, the government will buy it from you locally. You put them into certain sectors in Liberia, maybe Sando County, Lofa County, and you distribute them. Mr. Eastman is on an obligation with this 1 million or 2 million the government gave him, and the rice he produces is bought by the government and stored in his warehouses. 5 years. 5 years, we become rice self-sufficient. Now, if you want to introduce the plantains and all the things, let the people have option on all for democracy. The capitalistic market has to work the way it's intended to work. Every time the government try to, the free for the market. If you really don't understand how it works, Google common sense economic. Every time the government puts its hand in the free for the market, and that hand is chaklying things in the Liberian term, it disorganizes the market. The market has to work. Now, Mr. Eastman now been incentivized to go into Maryland County with $2 million loan or grant, whatever the government is giving him. He will utilize that loan because he know he got certain guarantees. Because you want to birth this new industry, you have to institute certain guarantees to that market. Mr. Eastman knows if he plants and he harvests 100 bags of rice, it's going to be automatically bought. If he do it for 5 years, the $2 million goes to him. 5 years. We can turn this thing around and will not import a single dollar into the country. And before I give it to Mr. Eastman, I want to say this. We import over $280 million worth of food into the country every single year. $280 million. In the first 5 years, with that strategy, you can cut that importation by half. And this is how we change it around.
Mr. Dualo, thank you very much. Mr. Eastman, just before you come in, I went to speak to a daycare, elementary school, preschool, and when I got in the line to eat, we're talking about from the very beginning. They have their plate into different portions.
Correct.
It is mandatory that you do greens, protein, carbohydrate, all of that portion. This is what I was talking about when I'm saying for us to introduce the diversified diet, where when you go to Basa and you go into the place, they give you this huge bowl of rice, only rice, and they put gravy on top of it, and you eat and you go home. Nothing else. So, in addition to what Duwala is saying, maybe we need to come up with some public policy as to say, listen, if you produce rice, if you got 500 acres, you can also produce plantain and all of these things on there, so we can now become, because like here, we have the system set up when we had the LPMC, where folks used to bring their stuff and sell it and go back in the interior, and then you, like you say, you warehouse it, you process it, and then you ship it out. So the system is there, but it have not been utilized to this extent, like he's talking about, and those things need to be brought back. But we also have to have some criteria set. Listen, you are not only going to grow rice because we need to diversify our diet here. We need everything else, including green peppers and all of that stuff. Let's go on and then we'll move on to the next subject here.
Very good. Just like you said, Mr. Gaiman, you know, the old quote, politics doesn't bring about development. You know, this rice thing was politicized, but we had to go through a developmental change. You see, if you allow the market value to determine what people eat, just what Mr. Dwalu was alluding to, you will find that people will naturally substitute products for another. It's a natural phenomenon. Okay, when you can't find sugar, and you go look for honey. Okay, when you can't find coconut, you find some other fruit in the tree or something. Economics dictates what we eat to a large extent. What you're saying is also true. There's a nutritional value of balancing your diet. Starch. If we remember how rice, even we go to the beginning of how we got to this pusawa addiction. I call it an addiction because that's what it happened. Before Firestone came here, we were producing rice. We're eating variable things on the market. Cassava, yams. We had. We were self-sufficient. Truly, we were an important food before Firestone. Firestone wanted people to be more involved in the production of rubber. So what they did, they said, don't bother about producing. I will give you rice, and you just produce the rubber. Our government didn't have the foresight to see that was not the way to go. That was not. So, yeah, and mind you, the grade of rice, Mr. Gaiman, that we produce, the country rice, is superior to the Pusawa rice in nutrient. In fact, when we in the 70s, when we were growing so much rice, they started exporting the country rice because it was more value. They got more money from exporting it to than selling it locally. But we had to go through the transition. In other words, we had to stop supporting imported rice. Wherever it started, we had to stop it. We have not stopped it. 40 years since 1979, we still addicted to imported rice, and we are bleeding trying to support it. Every country has to go through a transition, a phase, and sometimes it's a little bit painful, but you develop after you do it. If you refuse that development, then you stay there. You stay in that mode. So politics has never done anything good for us. All that stuff inside 79 was just throwing the whole country backwards.
I agree.
And that's what we got today.
I think, Mr. President, you are hearing it here from a Cedician like me, from folks who love the country. We all do. You have a popular mandate, and the people love you. I think they will bite the bullet, per se, to say we are willing to pay fair market price if it is available, and open the gate, let more people bring it in, create more competition, and the price will be determined by the competitors. And if you do that, Mr. President, all of these things will go. Now let's go to number 2 here. The U.S. State Department invites our Foreign Minister, Mr. Kemayah, to Washington, D.C. on the first phase of the conference on Feed the Future initiative that's coming to Liberia. And this feeds right into where we just came from when we are talking about agriculture. Now, this is not only agriculture, this is agribusiness. Feed the future. And this is spurred on by what's going on in the Ukraine when Russia decided to stab the entire nation actually to her knees. The world decided, well, where else can we turn better than Africa? We have everything that the world needs to feed the world. Liberia was fortunate to have been selected as one of the nations. Liberia became the fulcrum, just like when we had, during the Cold War, we had the tower, Omega Tower and all that. Liberia is now becoming the fulcrum on feeding the world. Dualu, this is an example, and a perfect opportunity for you and myself and Mr. Eastman to get into the agribusiness. We are talking about $3 billion coming down the pipeline. Are Liberians, are we ready to take advantage of this? All the Indians and the Lebanese and the Fulanese are going to become billionaires at our expense, Mr. Dualo.
I want to say this. I think you're taking the aim of the U.S. State Department's initiated differently, and I will explain why. I spent it when I got the invite today. I went on the site and tried to understand what this is all about, and I read quite a lot about it. But I want to say this: another thing with the rice importation or anything else in the country, the government does not need to put any markers on them. All the government needs to do is to set a standard. If you're going to bring rice in the country, meet these standards, anybody can import rice. You want to bring medicine, meet these standards. So the government can allow the free market to flow. I'm all for that. The free market has to flow for us to grow. But I'm going to say this. The invitation given to Liberia is not because of anything special. It's because we are in a dangerous place. Almost all the country, this organization, the U.S. State Department's organization for Feed the World, is run on the USAID program. And the aim of this program is to get countries who are extremely vulnerable to the risks of shortages of foods around the world. This is why they brought in. So places like Congo, Malawi, we are talking about South Sudan, these locations that are drought prone, locations that cannot feed themselves. They're bringing them to Washington, D.C., and the aim is to let them know, say, listen, you have to make tremendous preparation, because if you don't do this, if there are shortages around the world, your people are going to be in grave danger. In fact, it could put serious sovereignty risks to the country. This is what the invitation is for. But I want to say this. What the likes of Rwanda and places like Botswana and Tanzania have done, they've taken this program and they're indigenizing this program that is being spearheaded by the U.S. government. Say, listen, this is how you grow food. My question to our country is this. Are we localizing this program where we can get the infusion of money? Because they're not just going to give you money. It has to be predicated upon what you're doing home domestically. It goes back to what Mr. Eastman said. If we try to indigenize the rice production in the country, if we try to localize our food production, more money will come. They're not just going to give you the money because you go to these meetings. This is the question to my president, President Weah. How are you going to move this thing from the USAID program up in Washington, D.C. with these invitations into Sesto City to rice production? You mentioned the country rice. I used to love when my mother dropped me up in Riverside, and they would cook the country rice in the morning time with the fried. I still remember the smell. It has a nostalgic feeling. I understand exactly what you were talking about. And Mr. Eastman says something, and we forget this. When we allow foreigners to come to our country and dictate how we live, it becomes detrimental to us nationally. And this is exactly what Firestone did. We want an easy life. What we don't understand is if we don't solidify our local institutions, we're not getting the easy life. We're getting a temporary life that the pillars are not supported by us. So eventually, when these multinational corporations leave, the consequences befall us. This is exactly what's happening to our country today. Mr. Eastman.
Yeah, beautiful point. Beautiful point, Walu. So our message to our preso and those in charge: not every deal is a good deal. You have to have your experts looking into this and critically evaluating what the offer is. And I say experts. Right now, for instance, Mr. Gaiman, why is the foreign minister going to this meeting? The person who should be going to that meeting is the agriculture minister, the minister of planning. I know we combine it all into one. The minister of planning or commerce. Those are the people who will be directly involved in this sort of program. Mm-hmm. If you send, I've been in meetings with some people, and they're in the position, but they don't have the technical expertise. So everything we discussed in the meeting, they didn't understand the thing. Why are we have to send the requisite expertise if we want to get the most out of these programs. Definitely people from the agriculture minister, the scientists, the people who are on the ground with the farmers, those are the people who should be going to this meeting, because when they go back, they will know the kind of questions to ask. They will know the immediate needs of our farmers and people. They will be able to provide this organization with our immediate needs, not the foreign minister.
Thank you.
So we're making a mistake by not sending the requisite expertise
but listen
to get
me.
the most out of this program.
Mr. Eastman, this is one of the things that I keep saying to us. Those of us who have some expertise in these areas, we are talking about, the money is coming. They will be doing the RFPs. They will be doing requests, for the proposal and all of that. We know exactly how, when, and where. Like Dualo said, we know River says, because of the flatland and arable land, the water and all that, we know that they can do lowland rice. We know that. Grand Bassa County is there. Lofa County can do highland because where they are, as well as Nimba and Bong. We know all of this. Now, I know one time in Liberia, we had a Maserado Fishing and Agriculture Company that brought together a conglomeration of other experts to do something good. So why Dualo, Eastman, Gaiman, those of us who have the know-how and can maybe tap into some way of doing this, why aren't we collaborating and putting something together and be on the ground? Because the sole reason, and I know she's going to be mad with me because I'm a great fan of Mrs. Cooper or Ms. Cooper at the Ministry of Agriculture, but when I met her, I told her that what she was doing, the Minister of Agriculture that I met with prior, the gentleman was all about mechanized farming, and he was bringing all the major tractors and everything else. And then when Ms. Cooper came in, she said, guys, we don't need we need subsistence farming. So she was converted to small tools. And now here we are. So I know she's going to, her press people are going to call me and say, you're picking on her. But because they brought her in, because she had some expertise in growing rice. That was the main hope that brought her there. But since she's been there has been nothing innovative to say, this is how we're going to go from point A to point B. And we have gone through this rice cycle over and over and over and over. So what I'm saying here is we got to take the bull by the horn and get seriously involved in what's coming and make sure that the Indians and the other folks do not come and...
Mr. Gimmin, look, I'm going to side with Miss Eastman. I mean, and Cooper a little bit, the agriculture minister. This is why I'm going to say this. I was fortunate to have spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia. Like I said, as you be a U.S. Marine, we would go into South Korea, we train. I mean, I spent my 19, 20, 21-year-old all the way out there. We will go to Laos, we'll go to Cambodia. Mechanized farming has to be a progression. In Liberia, one of the things we do have in Liberia right now, people don't realize, is cheap labor. Every single society with massive level of cheap labor can develop very highly, very quickly. If you take even 100,000 people in Liberia right now, if you give them $75 a month, they will consider that a job. Do you realize the Laois, the Vietnamese, these guys, majority of their production are done on a very small scale? The thing is, it has to be organized in a way. Look, we have the platform. Our grandfathers, we are the grandchildren of old pass on trap setters. We look. I will go into the bombing territory. In fact, my village is literally in Monrovia County. If I went to my home village where my father is from, people did it with hopes. If I went to my mother's home up in Riverside, people did it the normal way. The progression is okay. We can mechanize, but we cannot go from 0 to 10 at once because we don't have the technical know-how yet. What the Laois are doing, they've been doing for decades, and some of our foods come from these locations. They plant them locally. They have 100 acres, 200 acres, 500 acres of land. And these lands are farmed by local farmers. Some of them make as low as $30 per month. So in Liberia, with $75 a month, you can have 5,000 people working on the farm. And this 5,000 is sufficient to produce rice locally. Look, it goes back to subsidies. The government keep wasting this money. It is not because Dualu criticizes President Weah that if Dualu has an expertise, you cannot capitalize on that expertise. It's detrimental to the entire society. Now, you made something. You say, listen, why aren't we going into the country and saying, we Liberians, we want to come and import, nobody's going to stop us. I agree. But let me say this to you, Mr. Gaiman. If people or business people or entrepreneurs see an environment as threatening to their bottom line, they're going to coil. They're going to stay away. And one of the reasons why some Liberians in the diaspora are not doing this because they don't feel the local governance process in Liberia right now is strong enough to protect their investments. People have to put the money somewhere where they feel they can get the money back in certain return. But it's a two-edged sword because we are not doing that. We are not stabilizing Liberia. Now, I do that still right now, but because we are not doing that in large numbers, because President Weah cannot do this himself, it has to be done with all of us input. All of us input. And how do we get to that level? We have to find that. But at the end of the day, it has to be spearheaded by the government.
And Mr. Eastman, before you come in, there's a gentleman that usually called me and actually contemplated investing in his initiative. It is Armstrong Jabba guy. And I spoke with him one night. I said, "What is your major obstacle?" He said, "De-stumping." He says, "We just don't have the machinery, the tractor to de-stump when they identify the land. You know, Liberia got those big trees to de-stump the land." He said, "This is where we need help from the agriculture ministry. They need to give us tractors and those things. Even if it's available, we can lease them at a reasonable cost. We would be able to do this. Tillers to till the land, all of these things. If we had the handheld tillers, you know, we can have, like I said, 200 people pushing those things. Yeah. They can go further with 500 acres. They can do this. So to de-stump, it's an obstacle to these folks. So those are the things I'm talking about when we're talking about whether it is local. When you talk about Laos, I was looking at one of the pictures from Laos. When you do when they use the I think it's some kind of overhead shot they use. Right. You can see the patches. Okay, it is so beautifully done. It's like football field, you know, in different segments. Yep. But it's all de-stumped. I mean, we talk about hundreds of miles of it, and they cut them into terraces, into different shapes. Right. So this is where we are at this point. That if you're going to do a land in Liberia, 100 acres with those big trees on it, you need help from the government to de-stump, because we are tilting the land. We're not moving around anymore. We're going to be using the same 100 acres. So these are the things we are talking about. So, Mr. Eastman, I know you are watching the comments here. What is it that you have in mind besides the government? What we from the private sector can do, can bring some pressure to bear on this particular thing that we make. We all want to be wealthy. We all want to be wealthy outside of government. I don't want to go be senator and all that. But like Mr. Dualo said, we need security. We need our investment to be protected, irrespective of which political party it belongs to. We should be. How do we bridge that gap?
You know, they say before you take a speck out of your brother's eye, make sure you take the plank out of your own eye. Okay. Our friends and partners in the U.S. here fault the Liberian diaspora for not doing enough for Liberia. That is bringing commerce and industry to the country. We're not forming organizations, unions, finance companies to be able to positively affect Liberia. We could do a lot more in this. In fact, at this point, they're almost like we just talk and do nothing. That is the flack we get now from our neighbors. They have seen other countries be very effectual in their homelands. But again, our disunity or our lack of cooperation is reflected in that we're not putting our resources together to bring about huge changes. I have seen a couple of papers, one forwarded, I think Ansu wrote one forwarded by Barnes, who's running for presidency. Yeah. I've seen papers, but there's not very much action has been done. So what will bring us together to move, because we are the middle class of Liberia. We who are in the diaspora, if you think about how much money we send home, how much wealth, I think this was contained in your paper, right? How much wealth we command, we could make a very big, huge impact in Liberia. But first, how to get us to cooperate, how to get us to be faithful enough to participate in such an organization is one thing. The other thing you mentioned is the transfer of technology. I wanted to write a doctorate in this because I'm in technology, and to simply bring technology and replace labor with it as is it's not always the best way to go. It should be a developmental transfer. In other words, when you bring that tractor, you bring that machinery, yes, it is more efficient, but what you want it to do is to develop the people around there, raise their standard of living. In other words, they must be the part of that machinery. Their businesses, their livelihood must be part of this new development. Part of these successful agriculture programs. Lucky for us, we don't have to invent the wheel.
Exactly.
India was one of those had a remarkable agricultural program, and it involves cooperative farming. These small, as much as you can use your digger. I'm not saying that they can't use their small tools, but if you want to make a big impact, you guys have to cooperatively farm your lands. Yep. That's how the machines can get to everywhere. Your joint efforts.
They still do that in the U.S. Yeah, they still do that in the U.S.
Yeah, your joint effort. You work on this man farm, then you work on that man farm, then you work on farm. That is how it has to be done. Again, it requires cooperation. So culture comes in, and all of these things play. Now, the agriculture minister may have some ideas, but I still believe you need other experts in there. Because some people have tried things already, and they tell you, "Yeah, I know what you're trying, but it's not going to work. So don't try it." So it's not. If we find that it's not moving the needle, why can't we have people? They come to us and say, "Okay, why haven't we improved agriculture?" It's not a criticism. It's let's examine where we are, the challenges we have been facing, and we can come in and solicit suggestions how we can change it. What if we want to make progress? We can't say, "Oh, we're doing it all right, and it's okay." Like you're protecting your job, or you don't want people to say you're not doing your job. No, it has to be reevaluated. Every company does this. Every year, we reevaluate our steps, reevaluate our program. Sometimes we re-engineer our entire process.
Obviously, we all do. And Mr. Dualo, this is where we all are kind of, when I was at the Chamber of Commerce, we have all the incubators, okay, where we teach people how to write business plan and we do research and find out what the trend is and all of that. I was very optimistic during the early time when she introduced, I gotta give her credit for that, introduced the community college system, which in this country was meant to actually build the middle class. But when I went to Bassa Community College and other community colleges, there were more people in the social sciences. There were more students registered to be major in sociology, political science, and economics. And the purpose of the community college, the TVET department, we had very few kids. I mean, we have to re-educate our folks. And I talked about the president has been very good to Grand Bassa County. We have a cement factory that is being built, and it should be ready by February or March. We also have a plywood company that is being built. They say about 1,700 to 1,000 direct employees on each. So that's 2,000 employees right there. The question I keep asking the Bassa people, are we ready when these companies come? Because this thing about relying on your representative to give you a letter of recommendation to get a job, we're not cutting anymore. If they are looking for an electrician, your representative cannot recommend you for those jobs. If they're looking for a heavy-duty operator, they cannot recommend you for those jobs. So are you going to be here protesting that these people brought their employee from Asia, from everywhere else? So when I said this, I got into trouble with the Bassa people in Buchanan because if you are not utilizing your TVET department, this whole thing is going to pass you by. This is where the money is, Mr. Dualo. You know that the people who work in those areas make the most money.
I agree, Mr. Gaiman. Look, it goes back to, look, I'm running to Liberia in 5 weeks, okay? And my sisters start calling me, my relative. Oh, Opa, don't come here. Oh, you know, you talk Bible, President Weah, if you come here, left will not be saved. Oh. A lot of, even here in the US, it's while you're going to Liberia, my man, don't go over there. Oh. I'm not saying, I'm still going to go there. I don't believe nobody going to bother me. I'm not saying anything. If President Weah wants to put me in jail, you can go ahead and put me in jail. The reason why I'm saying is there is a perception, and some of the perception the government has to lead. Now, you mentioned the courses that Liberians are majoring in. They're majoring in them because the government is not, look, government is meant to guide the process. This is government's job. If too many people are majoring in political science, there are policy measures you can employ at a given university or institution to veer people off away from political science into the courses that are actually paying or producing job in. The Chinese have done this. The South Koreans, I mean, people don't realize it. In the 1930s and 40s, South Korea was literally an agrarian society. The evolution you're seeing in this location, it took 50 years to come to full bear. Look, Mr. Eman did say something, and I want to spend my time on this. We are Liberia's middle class. And I continue to stress this over and over. It's one of the reasons why I'm going to Liberia. And Mr. Eastman followed me one time. I spoke about it after I published our paper, where we just about in the diaspora. People telling me, Dwalo, you're crazy. Look, if we do not put our hands on Liberia, Liberia is not going to develop. The government cannot develop Liberia. The preparation that is required to change those institutions in the country, the expertise is here in the West. Now, I do understand the government has to play a very pivotal role in ensuring this comes to fruition. But by the same token, we have to push it and make sure it comes to fruition. This is why I argue for the $1 billion challenge. I continue to maintain this. Like I said, the lawyers' fees, I've paid the lawyers' fees. I'm building the platform. I want a massive website. When I will come to Mr. Gaiman, say, Mr. Gaiman, I only need $1,000 from you. This is not free money. It goes into a diaspora corporation, something that will be set up here in the West. And we set up an entire entity. I go to Mr. Eastman. Mr. Eastman, I need you on the board for you to come in to see how we can find investments in Liberia. Look, the average Liberian, I maintain this all the time. We're not even the middle class. We are the top level upper class. We are the millionaires by Liberian standard. Okay? Because if the average Liberian lives on approximately $600 per year, and the average Liberian here in America, in Australia, in Britain, makes about $40,000 a year, there are approximately 1.2 million Liberians living in the diaspora. Let's assume only half of those people work, which is 600,000. That means we're making $24 billion a year at a very minimum. Now, I know most Liberians that I know make way more than 40,000, but I'm just being very conservative here. Let's assume $40,000. That means Liberia's entire GDP is approximately $3 billion a year. We are making close to 8 times what Liberia makes the entire year. Why aren't we effectuating this money into some factory in Liberia? Why, if we go into Liberia and build an 800 megawatt dam and we sell them back to LEC, we can build an 800 megawatt dam. It probably costs us $800 million. We can build the thoroughfare around the state of Monrovia, 8-lane freeway system. We can build a coastal highway. This is the only way we can change that country. The government budget as it stands, because it's not being allocated equitably, it cannot develop the country. There must be other resources. This is why I even promote voting from abroad. Charles Mr. Gaiman $300 a year to maintain his voting rights in Florida. You can still vote in Liberia. You can generate close to $100 million every single year that can go directly towards infrastructure. We are playing around with our country. Mr. Eastman is right. The Americans are mad at us because we are not actually effecting change in Liberia based on how much we make here. Every single Liberian, I don't care if you're working in the nursing home or the group home, you can come up with $1,000 in 1 year. I give you a 1 year span to come up with only $1,000. You don't have to pay it one time. You can say, oh, Opa, every time I get paid, $25 will go to my account. You get a certificate from Bank of America, from Wells Fargo. In fact, the account will be with Wells Fargo. The money doesn't come to Dualu. Everything will be organized through a major bank here. Once everything comes to bear, we have a board meeting. And look, we cannot be this rich and be this poor. It bothers the shit out of me. And I'm sorry for that language, but like I said, I'll be going to Liberia in 5 weeks. I'm talking to some guys because I want to get some seed money. And they said, man, Dualu, come down. Let's do some discussions. Because my thing is, I am not going to say it like this. Since I don't want to ever work in government, I have to find a way to be able to go home.
Make a living. Thank you. Okay, guys, let's go. We spent a great number of time. I think this is something that we're going to keep on discussing. Recently, bad news out of Liberia. Uh, Drug bust in Liberia to the tune of $100 million. I live in South Florida. The Miami hub is the drug conduit from South Central America, everywhere else. 100 million is a major deal. You don't hear that kind of number. $100 million in cocaine. That's serious stuff. Mr. Eastman, I know your father or grandfather or family you were related to work in the foreign service. So you know a little bit about this more than most of us do. This is a big deal, man. Our country is in trouble.
Mr. Gaiman, $100 million bust. That is huge. But there's a lot of things about this bust that are curious, if to say the least. And I want to start with, first of all, this was a tip-off from the U.S. government. So the U.S. government were very instrumental in alerting the authorities about this thing, about this this transfer of drugs, $100 million, cocaine, and all those types of drugs. Now, the little I know about Liberia drugs, I don't know if cocaine is that highly traded on the Liberia market. So definitely, this was in transit to go somewhere else.
Correct.
The three people involved was a guy from Burkina Faso, Malam Conte, a Brazilian, Gustavo Henrique, and a Portuguese. So they have Malam Conte in custody now. And according to the records, that the other two, the Brazilian and the Portuguese, they are on the run. But man, we know Liberia, right? How far can white men run in Liberia and not be noticed? Eh? I'm saying this because we have to be serious about enforcement, law enforcement. That is one of our weaknesses. You see, you cannot have a strong economy, you cannot have a strong nation if you're weak on law enforcement. Now, we have a very benevolent leader. I remember when he was asked about, they said we're all family. I agree, and it's very hard. But you cannot have a strong country unless you have strong enforcement of law.
Simple.
It's just that simple. So when you say you will not strongly enforce the law, you are making the decision not to have a very strong country, not to have a very strong economy. That is the decision you're making.
It's a
when you do it.
Our country, for someone else to tell us that, listen, well, first of all, we don't even have a Coast Guard system. We don't have any marine system. We don't have any no choppers, no area view of what's happening in our country. Somebody else said, listen, we saw something coming to your country. Y'all got to do this.
Yeah.
For the U.S. to say, listen, we tracked this thing from either Brazil, but it came from South America. And in the paper, the U.S. said it's on its way to the final destination. So we know a country that makes no money, that has no money, we are not the target head. We are the transitory point.
Yeah.
What does this say about our national security?
Well, you're talking about national security. I'll give you I don't go to Liberia without going to Buchanan. It gets my heart would not be satisfied. It's where my soul is. It's in Buchanan. It's my home. And one time I went to the Loop, and I'm sorry, it's a camp, Lanco camp. For those of you who don't know what a Loop is, and I went out there. And we were talking because if you know the Port of Buchanan has extended, they have a little bit of extension.
Yeah.
So in front of the Catholic school, this road is now going all the way across. They were built on the Ellen Johnson Chalet. And we were just speaking about a few of us, and we're sitting down, the boys work at the port. They said, oh, Bob, And I would say, well, out there, Europe. Basically, what we're trying to say, they said these white powders were coming, it will go into Europe, and they said it was being protected by government officials. Now, they didn't state who it was. Now, this is not the first time. We know there were drugs being washed on the beaches of Salmo County and Riverside County. We know that it happened in the past. It's been happening for the last 10 years. This is why the Americans realize this is direct harm to their sovereignty, with Liberia being a transit point. There's been literally agreement with people in power. According to the guys at the port, they say when the stuff come, they can send security guard, and the guard is started, they change the ship and they carry. They say it go into the where people country, it go into Europe. So it go past the law enforcement. You say we don't have Coast Guard. It is by choice, Mr. Gavin. Look, we live here in the West. A typical boat to patrol our shore can cost you $75,000. You won't tell me we can buy 10 of those, we can buy 20 of those as a republic to guard 350 miles of coastline. We can buy 20, 40 boats that cost $75,000. I'm talking about a decent sized boat. We say in a boat, but it's a small mini ship. You don't have to buy them brand new. You can even go to coast guards from around the world. You can buy used boats for $80,000, $75,000. We can buy 200 of those boats to guard our coastlines. But it is intentional because people are getting kickbacks from these. Liberia is being used as a transit point. And I want to say something before I give it to you. I wrote a paper called Zogo is Us. And the issue for that paper is we are Zogorizing the country in a way where the government, as it is not protecting the citizens of the country. We are allowing drugs to come into the country. You understand social issue way more than I do. Because we don't have the infrastructure to protect us, even though this is not meant for Liberia, it's going to Europe. There are some being left in Liberia,
Sure.
and on a very small level. And I hate to use it because they are our brothers, but I know the Nigerians, they're using the border with Guinea. They're coming into Liberia. If you go into West Point, my own cousin currently is the director of the drug enforcement operation in Liberia, Marcus Zayu. My mother's older brother's son. That's Marcus Zayu. He's actually running the drug division. So I'll say, my man, what was it? Opa, you can't even control the drug is taking over the country. The infrastructure is not there to protect the citizenry from the drug. So you see the Zogo numbers increasing. And what our people don't understand about the cocaine, the crack, and the things that are morphing into the crack level, it's going to hurt us heavily. The Americans that have the infrastructure, just imagine what they did here in the 80s and the 90s. We all know the history. Imagine what we do to Liberia if this continues to come into the country. But they're not just bringing it there because they think Liberia can just allow it to pass. Liberia is allowing this from the top, because somebody's getting kicked back. And the Americans not going to let this happen continuously.
It is. Mr. Eastman, go ahead.
Yeah, what we're going to see, more sanctions if we allow this level of illegal activity to continue. Yeah. The Americans are serious about money laundering and drug trafficking. Those two things they are huge on. And if we're going to allow Liberia to be used in this way, they're going to come down hard. There's definitely involvement. From what I've heard, there's huge involvement, even in the smuggling of our diamonds,
correct,
and gold
and logs.
We have heard of people. They are being protected. There's a lot of smuggling. We're going around begging, Mr. Gamer, but why aren't we closing the loopholes where we're bleeding? You ask yourself that question. And it's obvious somebody is getting something out of it. When are we going to be really serious about tightening up our economic? Are we going to be beggars all our lives? People are getting tired of us begging right now.
Yeah.
We're giving our unborn great-grandchildren a burden of debt to bear. For what? What have we to show for it? No development. So if we don't get serious, and I don't care if it's my mom, my pa, my brother, whoever is involved, you have to bring the law down to them. Like, I think the sanctioned officials to make the 3 officials who are sanctioned, give them a chance to go to court and exonerate themselves. But you must show that you are serious about enforcing the law. If you don't, then the people, they've already gotten the impression that we're not doing anything.
Well, Ladies and gentlemen, if you just joined, this is Focus on Liberia's On Point. Do us a favor, share this show. I think a friend of ours who has interest in agriculture sent me a little note saying, what happened to agri-mango? Okay, agri-mango was something that started on a Tolva and they were doing very well. So when Ms. Cooper came along, I thought, she was going to go that route. But anyway, that's it. But I want to say that before I move to the next subject here. 2011, I was at the State Department, and then later on flew into Liberia, and I was at a U.S. Embassy, and my sister was working at the time, and through casual conversation, it was mentioned that there were some major drugs. This is 2011 that was coming into the country, and they were identifying these Cessnas that were flying from the nearby country, and they knew that these drugs were headed to Las Palmas. From Las Palmas, then they went out to the different destinations. So they had all, and I just could not at the time believe what this lady was telling me, that we had that much quantity of drugs in the country.
Correct.
Coming through there. So when I read this today, I had to text her back and say, 2011, I think I may have been wrong by questioning what you were saying. Obviously, they had inside network that I didn't have. But yes, when we grew up, drug in Newtown, wherever West Point was marijuana. That's what we knew about marijuana and all that. But that this is a serious national security issue, and I think our judiciary. I'm talking about all branches of the government, because if you have like the Korean money that came in and the judiciary took somebody, the justice minister single-handedly took the people's money and said he built the fence for the president. I mean, it makes us look bad.
Very bad.
I think Ellen Johnson said at one time said we have all these audits. We tried to prosecute the first 4 or 5 or 6 of them, and they were all found not guilty. So we might well just leave it hanging over folks. Let them be guilty in the court of public opinion. Shame them. If our judiciary is rotten, you can prosecute all you want. If they want to walk, you might well don't give them the luxury to come and boast and say, you took me to court and I won, and now I can go and run for whatever I want to run. And my friend, what a boy named Edwin Snow said it. You'll take me to the Supreme Court, I'm going to win. Ellen did. Ellen tried him, and he did win at the Supreme Court.
Mr. Gilman, I want to add this there before we go on. I mean, what you say about Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, it just angers me, because there are real lives and real people at stake here. We are the fortunate few that we live in this people's country, but our country is dying because of negligence and total dereliction of duty on the part of our leadership in Liberia. And when President Weah first came to power, and based on the kind of lifestyle this man had from so-called the slums, I expected him to understand a higher degree of what it takes to transform our people's life. But we don't have a core system in Liberia. I want to say that. And I want to remind Liberians, if they don't know something about history, if the drug issue in Liberia posed a higher degree of national security risk to the Europeans and the Americans, your so-called sovereignty means nothing to them. It's happened in the past in Nicaragua, Noriega. You guys remember the case. The Americans can actually come into your country and extract the person that is facilitating this importation of drugs that is affecting their citizens. It is their national security risk. You don't have any armed forces. They can extract Prince Johnson today if they wanted to. Don't let nobody lie to you. You put 100-man platoon together, they can take care of that stuff in no time. What we are doing, we don't have security in the country. Look, in Sano County, if I remember correctly, I think it was 2015, a bunch of drugs washed up the coast of Sano, and people took this white powder, they were spraying it in the sun, playing inside with their hands. They didn't even understand the potency. We're talking about something that's like almost 100% purity level. It hasn't been diluted yet. 100% purity level, all on the beaches of Sano County. It took the Liberian police like 3 or 4 days for them to go over there. People were putting it on their fish so they can make the fish dry good. We didn't even understand this. We didn't even understand it. Our entire coastline. In fact, I think it was 2 months ago, there was a young Nigerian that were trying to go slow way into Europe. They were dumped up the coast of Sano. Luckily, they was not too far from the shore. They ended up swimming and came on shore. It just happened like 2 months ago. I think the story is still out there on the front page of Africa. So our entire country is open. We have absolutely no security. Everything, in fact, I don't think our sovereignty extends beyond Margibi County. Anything beyond that point, there is no control from the central government. No control whatsoever. President Weah has a job to do. We don't just talk against President Weah because this is an awesome responsibility, the office of the presidency. It is not a joking matter. That's when every time President Weah Boakai, it angers me because there's so much work to do. I'm not saying he will not have some fun, but his greatest responsibility should be to the people of the republic. It is not to the people. The way he's governing the country, it is not for the betterment of all of us. It's hurting the country massively.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Focus on Liberia's On Point. We have, when we are talking about, when you have a family, you have a mom and pop and cousin, there are times we have a family meeting where we say, you know what, our uncle here, sometimes he does some dirty stuff. He doing stuff with these little girls here and there. We're going to have a family talk where we actually do the real talk and we wash our dirt. We're washing dirty clothes because the clothes shouldn't be dirty in the first place. Don't keep anything dirty in your closet. So what we are doing here is not anti or pro-Weah. We are talking about pro-Liberia.
Thank you.
It will take every one of us. If you have a cousin or relative that you send money to build your house and he cheated you, that's corruption. If you have a cousin at the church who is using the church money and following the girls in the place that's supposed to set the standard for morality, that is corruption. Corruption is not only money. We are corrupt in our mosques. We are corrupt in our churches. These are the moral values. These are the moral trendsetters. Before I move on, I want to tell you this, and this came from a very close friend of mine, a Fula girl. And we're talking about capital flight. And she said, Jerome, you don't even know what you're talking about. She says, do you know how much we get out of Liberia on a daily basis? I said, but they don't transfer the money to the bank. I said, what bank? She said, that flag that we drink the water, that big flag they use for tea. You know the flag? You know that flag? She said they take out the bottom.
Yep.
And they stuff it with $100 bills. Some of those things take about 20 to 30,000 US dollars.
Correct.
And they are going across the border with those flags. Everybody has one of those. Can you imagine hundreds of folks going to Guinea and the other places and they carry 30, 40,000 at a time on a daily basis? This is inside somebody who parent does it.
But it's obvious they're not hiding. In some instances, they don't even hiding.
No,
they come for US. In fact, they come to change the money into Liberia when they sell. In fact, they change the money right away and go buy the goose. They're taking the money out of the country, but there is no measure employed by the government to make sure the money doesn't leave the country. The money leaves.
We are concentrating on the central bank and the banking system, and that will be the least of our problem. Go ahead, Ria.
But to that matter, if I may come in, if you're talking about U.S., you can't control U.S. currency. That's one of the reasons why countries like to convert to their own. You cannot control the dollar. You don't have that right.
Yeah, but
you
it's
have the right
control.
to use it.
Converting to your own is part of the control. I agree.
Yes, if you convert it, so at least some of it.
Yes.
To some denominations, then you can control that part of it. But there are a lot of things that we can't control. And Dwala, you were talking. You know what I'm really afraid of, Mr. Gaiman? When I look at Liberian expertise, do you know we really do not have Liberian experts? If you notice, if you want a good carpenter, a real good mechanic, a real good electrician, do you know he will not be Liberian? Mm-hmm. Not from about 7 out of 10 of the times it will be somebody from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. We are not. I know we're going to go into the human capital index. I think that is, but we are not developing our people.
Nope.
Eventually, we will lose the country because if we can't do it and they are doing it, we already see this with the economy. The Lebanese have full control of the economy. Lebanese and the Fula, by the way, the Fulas are making more gains than Liberians. They are making more investments and every day. Okay? If we do not begin to promote Liberians taking charge of their country, getting the requisite skill and they just passing around with, please, for handouts, we'll lose the country. The country will eventually be lost.
Yeah, thank you.
The country
Now
will eventually be lost.
Let's go to the next topic here. Recently, our former vice president, Honorable former Vice President Joseph Boakai, in his imagination, thinks that this government is the most irresponsible, reckless, and he said, damn real wicked. This is Joseph Boakai. And this is from a gentleman, a statesman, a politician that been in the game for the past 50 years, half a century, that have held almost every position from director to minister to the second highest office in the country, vice president for 12 years. He worked for Tubman, Talbot, Doe, Taylor, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and now he is saying of his 50 years experience, all his life, this particular government is the most irresponsible. I want to read it exactly as it crawled so we can see it, so nobody can say that we are making it. But he said, in his estimation, this is the most irresponsible government he's ever seen. Mr. Eastman.
Yeah, he said, and if we could articulate some of the things he said, I was kind of concerned by the bombastic way that he blasted the CDC government. He said the country is suffering from uncontrollable corruption. What do you mean by uncontrollable? It cannot be controlled, or what? Then he said bad government and bad. He said broken down educational system. Wait a minute. They inherited part of this education. It didn't start 5 years ago. Poor health delivery facilities. Again, it didn't start 5 years. Continual human rights abuses, deteriorating economic condition, and the negative effect of poor character among us. So he is saying that we have bad character. Well, let me just say this. I will commend the Ellen administration for trying to restore the nation from a point of collapse. I will give them that. But they were on life support. They were being upheld by, they weren't part of security. They had ECOMOG here, all those different UN, all those different troops here. They had tons of donor organizations that were here. They were on, it was really an unrealistic sovereignty or nationhood, okay? But everybody understood that they were in the process of, restoring the country. What this administration got, you're on your own, buddy. You got to generate. In fact, none of us going to be here. How much, Dualo, how many $1 billion they used to get every year just from the presence of the UN and all those organizations? It was in the billions every year. That is gone. Whoop. None of that. Your local production has not changed very much since they left. So what do you have now? This is why I keep saying there has to be a serious think tank, not friends, who are going to tell you this is what we need to do.
Correct.
Because we have to build this thing. They left you with not much. And then you have to get the kind of people, the kind of organization around you that will build the country. So even though he's going over all these, I would say that the government, that the administration that you guys had was supported. It was on life support. It wasn't what they have it's the challenge today. What I'm saying in actuality, the administration of Weah has more serious challenges than Ellen Johnson ever did, other than restoring the peace and the framework to work with. It's more serious, more egregious. There's less money, less resources available. and then the income, the revenue is way less than it was before.
That's Mr. Eastman. You did say a lot of things that I may agree with, but I disagree with most of the stuff you said. In fact, what Honorable Boakai said is not just 100% correct. I think he was being extremely modest. He was a statesman. This is how I would describe it. We are on the brink of total collapse. And I'm going to counter Mr. Eastman on this issue. He said they inherited a less stable condition. I mean, it's destabilizing. Most of the stuff that's happening right now is self-created. Irresponsible, uncontrollable corruption is induced by the leadership up on Capitol Hill. It's being exacerbated by President Weah himself and his lieutenants. Let me tell you why he described this government as irresponsible, and the government is forcing the Liberian people to live in abject poverty. And I'll give you some reasoning. Number one, look at the budget. 89% of our national budget literally goes to running the government. 89%. The lion's share of our national budget goes to run the government. In fact, we pay President Weah $655 every single day to eat. The entire allocation that was made to Riverside County education is less than what was allocated to President Weah daily meal. I want you to think about that. You take a man like Samuel Tway, that has run nothing, knows nothing about finance, you're making the finance minister. You take somebody like Jefferson Koji that's run absolutely nothing, never worked for more than $150 before. You give him the largest city in the country to run. You take a man that Alvin we said, you make him, I believe, deputy minister for technical services at the agriculture ministry. You want transformation. You take a girl, the Mama C. Kabab. This girl was literally in college. You make her a minister at the gender ministry. You taking people, you take Madam Natana McGill that could barely pay $35 a month. You make him minister of state. You're taking people that have absolutely no expertise. How do you expect the system to work when these people have no expertise, no training whatsoever in the specific field you put them in? I will agree with you. We need a massive think tank to tell the president the truth and give him solutions on how to address some of these problems. Most of the problem we are experiencing are self-imposed. If Ellen took the national budget from $80 million and brought it to $500 million, President Weah inherited a stable condition. Yes, it was some left support on Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, but it was stabilized, still sick, but stabilized and handed over to President Weah. What President Weah has done, he has worsened the problem. In fact, under President Weah, our economic group has actually decreased over time. Look at all the indicators.
Excuse me. Let me go ahead, Len.
Okay, the high school enrollment rate has dropped under President Weah. Okay, the tax collection base, because the businesses are literally leaving the country. The increase of businesses you saw on Ellen Johnson Sirleaf has actually decreased under President Weah. Every single viable institution that could up the standard of living in the country has digressed under President Weah. What can we say to that if it's not irresponsible leadership under the presidency of President Weah? This man is bad for this country. This man must go. He must go yesterday, because if he doesn't go, our entire society is going to collapse.
Mr. Dualo, you talk like a UPPN. That's good. You're from the UP party. So I
belong to no party. I belong to no party.
Excuse me. You support Joseph Boakai. You support the Unity Party. You were part of the Unity Party. When your first taste, your first bite on business in Liberia were under the Unity Party. So we expect you to say these things you will say, but you are wrong with the numbers. Because when I'm looking at the World Bank and the EU's report that just came out, under this administration, this government, the economy has grown 8 points. The World Bank says that Liberia, okay, in 2019 was at a -3. And as of last Monday, the projection is that we are at 3.7, and the economy is going to grow to 5%. From -3 to 5, that's 8 points. It went from the negative to the positive. That's 8 percentage points. And the projection of this economy, they say not only that it's going to move in the positive, but they say the economic policies, monetary management, all of those things put in place by this administration. My friend, what are you reading? I know you are a politician and you want to ping everything wrong, but Mr. Eastman was right. According to I got a report here from not from Yale here, we're from Cornell. It says here that Liberia's Ellen's greatest fault was relying solely on the military support. That is the 15,000 military folks that were in Liberia.
I agree.
a military economy.
I agree.
With that being said, they did not put anything in place. So when that 15,000 left, that $700 million went along with it, and Ellen admitted that economy is going to be tight. We're going to tie our belts. So you see other things. I know you're from the United Party and you want to be, but Joseph Boakai, I want to say what President Weah said. Joseph Boakai, where were you when you were vice president of this the past 12 years? You didn't know that we have abject poverty? You didn't know that there were poverty in Liberia? You didn't know that education was backward? On board that walk from 4 years, and you want us to believe that from 4 years to Monrovia? You didn't know that something caused you to walk from 4 years to Monrovia? You said you were in search of education. So this thing go all the way back. Joseph Boakai, I think the old man is getting too old. He cannot analyze anymore. This is what we call senility is setting in. He's getting to be senile because he's not actually progressing to the point where he can analyze and do what we call a projection based on analysis. He's too old.
Mr. Gibbon. Yeah, even coming, but you're lying.
Yeah, let me come in a bit because remember this is apolitical. So
yeah.
You know you gotta talk so you talk so.
That's true.
Now there has been some growth, but you know my first love was economics. Back at LU, in fact, my comrade Gonglu, they were the high scorers when I was there. But let me come in with that. You know, growth is one thing. Yes. In other words, if you had there may be more economic activity in the country, or perhaps your revenue has gone up somewhat. But there are other indicators that give you another picture. One of those indicators is what we call the human capital index.
Correct.
That tells you, Mr. Gamer, this is really key. That tells you, are you using your education and resources in the right direction in developing capital, your human capital? Because that tells you if the country is actually going to develop or not. You will find that in this human capital index that African countries, of course, are on the lowest ebb.
Correct.
Liberia is like fourth from the bottom.
Yeah,
we're at 0.32, and something like if you will, something like America will be way up in about 0.6 or something. Like if you want to know where we are.
Correctly, we're not 0.32, 0.032.
Thank you. 0.032. So be careful with numbers. Yes, we have some growth and we can take a pat on the back. But what will make the difference if we develop our people? We got more people trained, more, which is called HCI, more people professional. Okay. We also have another thing on our back. They say our population is exploding. The people are burning, even though there's not much change in revenue, but the people are burning left.
That's only entertainment.
They got nothing to do. That's
and that, of course, you know, that is bringing down the per capita
numbers. Yeah,
index. You know, when you see that. So what? I will stick on this HCI because HCI tells you are doing the right thing. In fact, you will be moving, your country will be developing tomorrow. If you're not moving HCI, don't look at growth alone. Okay, but let's go to the Boakai issue. You know, I find the whole unity and the Boakai issue very strange because his main advocate today, Mr. Henry Costa, you describe him as a sadistic, unrepentant, unapologetic, tribalistic old man. This is the same guy who now is touting his baton all around. I don't understand the politics of Liberia. I think a lot of it is not sincere. But I'm concerned with moving the country, Liberia, ahead. And I've seen several of Ambassador Boakai's projects. You know, Ambassador Boakai always champions being a part of the LPMC. I remember in 2007, he ordered a comprehensive audit of the Liberian Marketing Committee. What came out of that? Nothing. In 2006, they broke ground for the construction of a food processing factory. Where is that today? In Jozon, somewhere in FNL. In 2009, with $4 million, they constructed a U.S.-based food processing company. Where is that? You know, so I when people be telling me that they will do this, I always go to your track record and see what you've really, and I want to see where it is today. It's one thing breaking ground, but where are these companies today? Where have you? How much have you affected Liberian livelihood? You know, so politicians will say what they want, but who actually does is what we need to look for.
It's a given. It's a given. Yeah.
I want you to address this too. In 2007, 2008, when Ellen introduced through the world body the community college system to all the community colleges, I was one of those who were cheering her on because I thought it was great. Then the guy who was the editor-in-chief of the Perspective in Washington, D.C. called me and said, Jerome, this is great. He said, but we are going back to the same thing that the conversation that were held when they were building the University of Liberia. The question is, why aren't we starting with building the feeder institutions first? Let's try a great kindergarten system, a great elementary school system, a great middle school system, then a great high school system. Then we can go on to community colleges. But as it stands, we don't have the feeder institution. So when I look at that number where it says our human index, they made it clear Liberia is illiterate.
Yeah.
That's what the article says.
Yeah.
We are illiterate. We can't read.
For 18-year-old, somebody who reaches the age of 18 will only have 2.2 years of education. We have at least one of the least in the world. But you say a few things I have to address. I don't want to forget any one of them. Number one, I was completely opposed to the community college systems because I believe we're doing things in reverse. In fact, I published a paper called Restart Liberia and Build a New Foundation. And in the paper, one thing I argue is to segment the country into 5 zones. Look, the first thing I realized, there was no freaking way we could have funded those community colleges. Okay, it was being built for the same political reason that President Weah is doing now. But let me address some of the things that I say with a bunch of fallacies here. Now, first of all, you talk about the projections up to 8%. If you look at the real numbers, it's true. If we were -3, you go to 5, that's great. But you got to remember, these projections, they're exactly what they are, projections. Whenever the World Bank gives you a projection, it's predicated upon you doing certain things before the projections come to be realized. And President Weah has not done those things, so the projections are not going to be realized. Number two, the conditions of the country, it may not have been very great under Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, but it's been exacerbated downward by President Weah's poor and absent leadership. Number three, the so-called increase in President Weah or the standard of living in the country has actually dropped. It's being felt by the people. Don't tell the people what they're feeling. We know how the country is. Everything, every human development index, every economic indicator is in reverse based on how the people are living. Look at the enrollment rate, especially the girls' enrollment rate. But I want to address what you just stated in terms of the community colleges because it was dear to my heart. Look, anybody believe in Liberia that school is good? But here's the thing. School is only good to the extent that it produces the kind of result that we are seeking. I, for one, believe when President Weah made LU free, it was one of the dumbest decisions he could have made ever. Ever. It was so stupid because I believe that decision was not well thought out. Imagine if we took money and we truly made primary education free from kindergarten to 12th grade. In fact, I did a presentation about 2 weeks ago, and I will give you some of the numbers that I had. In 1991, the literacy rate in Rwanda was 34%. In Liberia right now, it stands around 48%, according to what they're saying. But even though at the age of 18, in fact, 65% of Liberians between the age of 14 and 30 do not complete primary education. That's from kindergarten through 6th grade. So we are literally illiterate, like you said. But what the guy did in Rwanda, Kagame, what he did was, he said, listen, there was a proliferation of private school all across the country that we see in Liberia today. In fact, you must say, go to Liberia right now. We set up our school. We charge $1,000. People have to pay. There is no regulation. The education ministry doesn't exist. My namesake, Ansu Sonny, he's a freaking know nothing. He doesn't know what he's doing at the education ministry. Kagame, for quality in the public school, he built new public schools. Do you realize $100,000 can build a nice public school from kindergarten all the way to 6th grade? Top quality with playgrounds, everything for our children. He built these public schools around the country in the span of 20 years. I want you to listen very carefully. In the span of 20 years, nearly all the private schools are closed down because the same quality that are in the public school and now what's in the private school. So people rather send their kids to public school as opposed to the private schools. He upped their literacy rate. Right now, it stands about 76%, while Liberia continues to hover around 47, 48% because we are not putting quality in the public school. In fact, there is absolutely no quality in the public school. You went to Basaha. This is crazy. My mom went to Basaha. It's to be a top quality school. But go to Basaha today. Do you realize that our kids graduating in Liberia can barely, from university, that can barely read above 9th grade? LU was a top level university. They have people coming from around the world coming to LU. This is a quasi institution. In fact, I believe LU is a fancy high school masquerading as a university right now. It's fancy. And people don't want to hear it. I'm being dead serious. So instead of putting the money into these technical vocational schools into 5 zones, 5 regions across the country, you were building one in every county. How do you even find the qualified professionals even teaching the so-called community colleges? This is why you see almost every community college around the country right now, trees are growing in these buildings. The government just wasted more money. And this is on Ellen Johnson's lead. President Weah has to think this education policy because it's not going to work. True to make primary and secondary education free. And this is the only way we begin to build the human capital in the country. I'll give it to you.
Mr. Eastman, we are running out of time. We got 15 more minutes to your closing, and we've got to be out of here by 6 o'clock. But this is one of the best shows that I've ever had. I enjoy because this is predicated and strictly geared towards Liberia. It's not partisan based. It's not politics based. This is strictly how we are going to solve the issue here. Mr. Eastman, you have it.
Do
you want to read a few comments first?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, you read 5, Mr. Dwello read 5, and then you can use it to do your closing.
Okay, Huxton Brooks said, "Great education plan, Mr. Ansu Dwello. Have you communicated it to President Weah? If not, why not?" Starlink Warwood, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf sets the bar so low to the extent that George Weah can become president.
Exactly.
Ellen Johnson Sirleaf legalized corruption at the Capitol building and across Liberia.
I agree.
She is the reason why Liberia is a mess.
Yeah.
Mondiga, college graduate can't read and write. While you're talking, just because they graduate from high school does not mean they can read and write. John Blemmy, Liberian politicians are talking and talking without doing anything to help the Liberian people. Politics in the mouth is a rhetoric. Do something tangible to rescue the people on the rice issue. Stop inciting the citizens with your mere rhetoric and threat against the president and the Liberian people. Don't sit in the USA and cause chaos in this country. Do you want to use your political tactics to wage war on the Liberian people? Nani Bubi, misleading numbers, Mr. Gaiman. How does the World Bank measure the value of Ma Mary and the Bitterball sellers? World Bank interest is World Bank. Don't be fooled. Huxton Brooks again. Mr. Game, I love and respect you, but please do not insult the intelligence of the decent people that follow you by bringing up those useless World Bank figures that have zero tangible effects on the ground. Darling Wildwood, Jimmy Eastman just cleared my doubts. You scored D's and C's while at LU. I now understand your lack of understanding of poor presentations.
Oh, God.
He's on the attack. Malik Bade, year after you have stolen the country money, year after we have stolen the country money. Eugene Wijla, the government should hire competent people to do the work.
Agree.
Eric Bade, tell the dumb man to sell all those mess he built, calling it a house. I'm not sure who she's talking about there.
President.
And Joseph Cotto, we have government officials of Weah-led government looting millions of dollars and having it saved in a foreign country. At one point, using the same taxpayers' money to destroy the young generation with drugs as a means of hypnotizing them as followers. They prefer to feed the kids with drugs as giving them education and basic social services. The kids nowadays are not mindset people due to the poor mental health. Shadrach Logan, this is not the rice alone. Let's look at the currency issue also. Denominations are almost out of market. It is difficult to carry on transactions. A Facebook user says Liberia should produce its own staple food. Subsidies should go to Liberian farmers. I agree with that. I think we talked about that. Huxton Brooks, Liberia needs to build an agriculture economy with priority and subsidies going to rice producers. I think we're all in unity on that. And Elizabeth Picatier, yes, Mr. Jerome, the population of Liberia can't pay $25 to bag of 4 bags of rice. Ahmed Salif II, when a country is governed well, it recognizes all its opportunities for growth.
Agree.
Shadrach Logan, we will always be spectators in our own economy. People in government need to put their ego aside and think Liberia. Midfield Deco, 100 million worth of drugs in Miami. This is very troubling for our beloved Mama Liberia.
Oh, man, Midfield.
Huxton Brooks, Mr. Gaiman, you cannot change the historical diet of an entire population. Anthropological research has proven this already. Huxton Brooks, gross lack of political willpower, corruption, and bad governance is the source of many of our problems in Liberia. Huxton Brooks, diversified diet, yes, but that will not replace rice as a staple in the Liberian population. Mary Patterson was being on you the whole day here, Mr. Gaiman. You are shameless. You are one of those that have been fooling Weah all this time. Obi Tukba, Liberia had never been served enough with rice. We have always been important. That is the truth. Well, before the coming of Firestone, we weren't important that much. Augustus Bailey, excellent analysis and points, Mr. Dwalo. Eugene Wijla, I know we all love rice, but rice is not healthy for us. Let's find substitutes. Liberian, please get to the soil to grow some of your foods.
Great.
Totally agree. And yeah, Eugenia again, plant yams, edibles, potatoes, cassava, and etc. Go back to the soil. Yeah, it's we've been emphasizing and this other guy, I don't like to boast, but I went on scholarships everywhere I went on. Whatever happened to Agramico in Liberia? That was an Israeli company. They used to do a lot in Liberia, but they went. I think they went before Talbot even left office. They had already left the place. Eugenia again. My parents and grandparents made farms when we were in Liberia. Get back to the soil, my people.
Great, Mr. Eastman. We got a mouthful there. We got a handful. You close up. You got your 2 minutes. Let's
Let him rest. He just read plenty. Let me go for it. Let him rest.
Go for it.
Go for it. I don't want people to say the mayor, your guest. You make sure you put him last. Go ahead, sir.
No, my man. You know I didn't look. The audience, Mr. Gaiman. I'm going to say this. You have one of the most engaged and educated audience. I love them. You know, and one thing I love about you, Mr. Gaiman, you always, despite the criticism, you will highlight the comments. And whether he criticizes you or not, this is a good trait, and I love that about you. But I'm going to say this about our country. And we have to.
Yeah, let read it. Put that back, please. Put that comment back. Read that one, Mr. Dualu. You read that one.
It's a great discussion today, Mr. Gayman, Mr. Eastman, Mr. Dualu. I gave the show 5 stars. That's great.
Right. There you go. Thank you.
I want to say this.
Just what you said. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to say this. We got to talk about our country. At the end of the day, despite having different political views, what they may be, I don't care about President Weah one bit. I care about the evolution of Liberia. At the end of the day, we shouldn't allow our criticism to make us hate each other. I want to drink pound one with my brother gay man. So I have beef fufu on the St. John River. It's a dream of mine. And people think this is funny. This is real talk. I want to eat some St. John coffee with heavy domo. It brings the satisfaction.
The chicken feet. Don't forget
the chicken feet. Yeah, with chicken feet. We want Liberia to evolve. And I really believe this, Mr. Eastman. I believe we have the expertise now, the capability to some extent. Not on a larger scale that we desire, but relatively enough where we can begin building the platform to elevate the country. Mr. President, if Mr. Dualu criticizes you because he opposes something you are doing, it doesn't mean you cannot look to Mr. Dualu if he has a great idea. The issue here is it's not about now, because we are all Liberian. I have to make this clear. I don't want job. I never want job ever. I'm not saying this for job. The mere fact that I even have to make that clarity points to the kind of division that we talk about in our country. We have to find the best and brightest for our society to evolve. We will always be playing the second fiddle role if we do not capture the best and brightest. Do you think Mr. Eastman cannot import tires into the country and put a warehouse on Meglin Street? It's simple. It's not a complicated things. The Syrians, the Arabs, they're coming to the country and literally taking advantage of this because we believe if Mr. Eastman become a millionaire in Liberia, it poses a risk to Mr. Twert's morale. This is lunacy, my people. We got to change that if we want Liberia to change. Mr. Eastman, guys, thank you so much for the show today.
Yeah, a great discussion, gentlemen. And to all our audience out there, what we're looking for are answers, and we hope that our voices will carry over where somebody of significance will hear it and implement. We can turn Liberia around. It will require some serious steps. In other words, we have to grit our teeth to do some steps. We have to enforce the law. We will have to embrace all and tap off their intelligence. But what I've noticed a lot is people just want to get what they can and go.
Yeah.
They've abused poor Mama Liberia. They take what they want and they go. Well, that is something we will have to change. And we hope, we see leadership that we promote Liberia in everything. Let everybody be more conscious and feel guilty every time they take something from Liberia, every time they receive a kickback, every time they receive a bribe. Let them feel guilty about it. Let's start a campaign that will change our moral code so that we will be driven to do the right thing. And if we do the wrong thing, let it bother our conscience. Today, look like conscience go on vacation. Let's bring it back and turn the tides around.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. Let me recognize a few folks here. Darlene Wardwood, yes. We got, is that Darlink? Yes. We got Shad Song. We got Houston Brooks, Augustus Bailey, Money Guy. Lots of folks here, gentlemen. We can't call everybody, but we do the best we can to recognize you for tuning in. John Blimmy, I think the name is. Namdi Boobly Brooks, and we have Lincoln Wanzon. 2 minutes to call, but ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This is what it is all about. A few years ago, 2005, when I supported George Weah, we lost the election. 2006, 2007, I was in Liberia. I was working with the alien government, not as an employee, but I was carrying NGOs, I was carrying investors, and people were saying, you were switched out, you did it, but I wasn't going to allow a defeat to disallow me from realizing my dream of going to my home and investing and mingling with my folks. Some people say, I will not go to Liberia to Ellen Lee's office. Can you imagine adding 12 years to your life of inactivity? No. I went over there and she was gracious. Every time I went, I met with her 3 times. She wrote birthday cards for my kids. This is a woman that I criticized. I said some of the worst things about, but she sent birthday cards, greeting cards, handwritten, signed to my children. So what I'm saying here is, because George Weah is in power, like Mr. Dualo is doing, it's not stopping him from going and realizing his dream. You can still talk, you can still criticize, and still be productive. If you hire 5 people, you are taking 5 people off government payroll. And as you know, because of our extended family, for every 1 person you hire, you are hiring between 8 and 10. So if you hire 5 people, you are actually hiring 50 folks. You are impacting 50 folks. We can't wait until our man or our woman come into power before we go. We can't do this. So go home, the fear mongering. I went to Bassa. When Ellen was there, I drove in the interior. I went on my village. Nobody followed me with everything I said about her. Nobody followed me around. There was nobody harming me or threatening me. Everything else was just politics, and I didn't buy into that. President Weah, I go home every day and I see a lot of the folk who criticize President Weah are there doing their business. Even my friend Sandy Kwehe, when she came, when she went, she and Dr. The girl on Spoon, they went home and they followed. They went everywhere around the country. Nothing happened to them. So we cannot build our country by staying away until your man or your woman comes in. You have to go out there and do something. So, Mr. Dualo, I thank you. I think we need to, when we say we need a think tank, this is our own think tank right here. Let us begin talking among ourselves, putting our ideas together, and corral our resources so we can forget about this individual effort is killing us. Everybody wants to be their own boss, own their own company, and they don't even have the resources. But if we come together, if we put 5%, and if it fails, you are losing only 5%.
Thank you.
If you are doing it all by yourself and you lose 100%. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Mr. Dualo, thank you. Hopefully, we can do this again on Sunday. Continue to educate and elevate our folks. By God's help, we will do very well. This conversation, remember, Bladden had the same conversation years ago when we were building.
I agree. Yes, exactly.
It
works.
Yes, we need to start with, we need to industrialize. We want to make sure that these people can feed themselves, work, use their hand before you go to the university level. And the people, they didn't listen to him. Same thing with the community college. We don't have a feeder program. We build a community college. Now it's empty. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
In the show today, let people read Bladden. He was one of Liberia's greatest sons, man.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah. Please do your research, but if you read William Bladden's letters, you will be, it's just awesome human being. Awesome. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And as always, we say, whether you are in position, opposition, you love us, you hate us, we are all Liberian, and that's why it's going to take to elevate our country. So we end the show with our song, We Are All Liberians.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home.